Well, good greetings, everyone. That covers all places and spaces. And this is WeAwake that we do. We try to do it weekly, and there's always a track here. And we pick one from our extensive library of brain entrainment tracks, and we use them together. We meditate together. And yeah, in my preparation for this meditation, I was meditating, and the idea came up is that to get beyond where we are right now on our individual growth, um, uh, evolution to understanding of ourselves and our actions and all of this stuff, we have to recognize where we're at because you can't get to where you're supposed to be until you're where you are at. So I think perhaps during this meditation, and this is rather a stimulating, we're going to do starting flow, stealing flow, sorry. Stealing flow is also for the purpose of starting flow, but it's called stealing flow warm up, and it's 25-minute track. And it's one of Pam's favorites, you know, created by Doug Prater. And it's a good one. And it stimulates our mind. So why don't we just go inside and do some inner, I mean, once you get into the zone, once you relax, get your breathing going correctly, go and say just like, where am I at? What is my perception of the reality of things? You know, what is my perception of myself? Am I part of something bigger, or am I a lonely individual? Do I have a calling? Do I feel that I have a calling, something I'm supposed to do, or I'm just kind of, I don't know, taking it from day to day? Or am I just looking at the state of the world and getting depressed and angry and feeling powerless? Or do I, feel something connected to something bigger and deeper and wiser than what the outward appearance is? And the flood of information we get on these little beasties would lead us to think. And, you have to be careful with that. But I think it's important because they have all these stimuli that are trying to get you to focus on other stuff, get you addicted to their shows, to their sports, to their newscasts, to the latest disaster politically or whatever it might be. Just get compulsive. And it really takes us away from ourselves and gets us living in a place that's not healthy for us. And it gets in the way of the other stuff that we're being called to do or that is coming through us. So it can be really disempowering and distracting and painful. I don't think we should ignore what's going on in the world. I think if we live in democracies and we have a chance to be part of the political system, then we should be aware. We should be voters, should be participants, however tiny that may seem. Or if we live in a country that is not a democracy, what can one do if one so desires democracy? Desire to have a big, strong man, in most cases, a strong man and not women, telling us what to do and, uh, sending you to prison for 7 years for calling a war, or whatever it might be. What can one do? And what is, again, it's just a personal alone struggle? Are we part of something much greater? And if we are, how do we open our eyes, or can we open our eyes? Something our eyes have to be open to perceive these deeper reality. So getting back to the original question is, where are you at? Where are you at in your emotional, psychological, and spiritual development? And what's the starting place? Because you can't get to the next place and it's in the nature of things to evolve and grow. The seed becomes a tree, or the nothing becomes a something in terms of the spiritual being. Everything just comes from nothing. And the Buddhist sages said that form is emptiness and emptiness in form. The, the emptiness contains all the manifestation, all the form. And the form is nothing other than the emptiness. Well, that's a really interesting idea, but it can also be a perception that we get of the mystery and the nature of reality and how it's so beyond our limited cognitive capacity to understand, although our cognitive capacity is pretty amazing. Human brain, what a thing. So without further ado, this is let's see, I seem to have lost it. Stealing flow. Oh, and turn off your I don't know, turn your ringers off. Put yourself on airplane mode or something so you don't get distracted. And let me find my track. Here we go. Well, beautiful track. Thank you, Doug. Hope everyone was able to reflect a bit on where you're at. And when we reflect on where we're at, we can begin to sense in to where we are at with the bigger picture. So it's just our little sacred identities that are known as egos, but they're not just false things. They're actually the seeds of evolution. And, within them, they contain the whole universe. As we grow, wake up, become more and more aware of that. And also, if you enjoy this, you come back and meditate with us. And you're doing this on YouTube, hit like, leave comments, subscribe. That helps us to get out to more people. And why is that important? Because what we do has consequences. When we meditate, we create fields. And you might think of all reality as just fields of energy, dimensions that you can't see. In other words, all these, what we're talking about now is going through these little wires from satellites and all this stuff. And where's that stuff? We don't see it except when it manifests. Well, that's the way reality seems to be. Most of what we are is unmanifest. So, yeah. So when we do this together, when we meditate and put our hearts and minds together, I think we are creating a Rupert Sheldrake, the scientist, would call it a morphogenetic field. That has an influence on the way reality or the universe continues to manifest itself. So, our thoughts, everything, it's a positive. I've been working with AI for a while now, ChatGPT, and it's not perfect, but sometimes it screws up. I call her a she. Go ahead, arrest me if it's a long pronoun, but I just say that because it feels like that. It does feel personal. And I said, well, what up with this? And she goes, okay, thank you. Because the more that you tell me about this and you open and you ask good questions, that influences the way the whole thing develops. So I think that is a small representation of how our acts actually influence the greater good, even though we feel that we're not doing anything. Mathematically, chaos theory has shown us that the smallest fluctuation can cause huge changes in the whole field. And that out of this chaotic state, just one little thing can cause the whole thing to come out of, emerge into something that is more functional, more organized, more beautiful. So never underestimate what you can do, but it's important that you do it because we can't know what effect we're going to have, but we can know that if we don't do it, it could have, it could hurt. It could take away from the love and creativity and enlightened state that you're moving towards, to where we become part of this bigger one. The Times talked about the three postulates he had in the one, all, he said, was being itself, is consciousness itself. The nous, the thought, the dynamic manifesting energy. And then the last one is the soul. individual souls, which was part of a bigger soul, which, although it expresses itself individually, and that's okay, that's good, it is connected to everything and everyone else. And when you begin to experience that, it can be very beautiful. Also be really painful, because one of the things when you begin to wake up, you also begin to feel the suffering of others, human beings, and the planet itself, all the creatures, all the sentient beings, everything. The Native Americans said everything's alive. You know, the ocean behind Isabalita and Rex is alive too. It's all, we don't live in a dead universe. At least that's what the great sages have always said. And what we sometimes get hold of. But it changes the way we are. It connects us to something bigger than our individual struggles and our gifts. And sometimes we can feel that coming through us in moments of creativity, in moments of service, in moments of kindness, in moments of prayer, in moments of meditation. Listening to music, watching the wind go through the trees, or hearing the song of the bird, on and on and on. So recognize where you're at, honestly, on your journey. And because that's the next platform that's going to take you to the next place. And it apparently never ends. It's just this ongoing journey. A.H. Almas or Hamid that Roger Malson and I have been talking to. I think it's 14 or 15 conversations we've had, and we call it the Wisdom Series. And a couple of times before that, but he says there's not just one way to experience enlightenment, because God is infinite. In the different traditions, we try to say, well, this is the right way, got to do it this way. So all these things are valid. So you can wake up in whatever way you wake up. Having a fight with your wife, and all of a sudden, ding. You're sitting on a park bench, or you could be struggling and meditating, for years, trying to wake up, and finally, and then something begins to happen. It's like grace, something that's beyond yourself, something you couldn't have done by yourself, in your own little self. But in actuality, your little self is not a little self, it's a big self. It's the big all. Use the language, you fill in the blanks, how you want to talk about it. So, yeah, so when we get honest about, okay, I was getting a message from my phone. As I was saying, when we practice, what we practice doing is practicing opening ourselves up to that which is beyond ourselves, to that which we are. But in our awareness, sometimes we forget what we are. So just I think of it as opening ourselves to divine compassion, divine grace. Yeah. We don't have to do the work, we just have to be available. And that's a lot of stuff. So thank you for being here with us. If you know anyone who would perhaps benefit from doing this practice with us, great. Let them know. Let's try to be the most awake, compassionate versions of ourselves today. Realizing paradoxically that we can't do it. It has to be done through us. And that which is doing it through us is us. So that's a good thing to stop on. So thank you all for being here. Yeah, God bless.